Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gentlemen, all in crypto here, and welcome back, guys and girls, for another YouTube video. This is going to be your daily cryptocurrency market update, and I just want to start things off by looking at the market, looking where we're at, and then we'll bring in all the data that's coming out this week and take a little bit more of an in-depth look at it. You know, Bitcoin has run into 30K. Now, the real question, and you can see you've got this real divide between the bears and the bulls right now, and time will tell who's right and who's wrong, is have we just rejected and as always, it should have been expected, resisted off this, or is this now the precursor to further downside, and is the hard landing now coming in? My take is that 30K is and was always to be expected as resistance, and that this is a pullback that will lead to more continuation to the upside. My money's where my mouth is on that. We've continued to buy crypto. We made the call at the start of the year and done so up until this point, and ultimately expect Bitcoin to go to the high 30s, 40K plus this year. Until we're proven wrong on that, until we start to come and invalidate some of the structure that we currently have in place, then that's the bias that we have. Now, lots of people calling for downside here, and that 30K is potentially the start of a larger drop. I'm seeing bears claim victory over the bulls, which is, I think, rather nihilistic. Most people only really flipped bullish down in this area, and actually certainly after FTX. When actually I think that the trend was in a very late kind of stage. You know, one thing that we looked at was the RSI div. That was a big thing that we said, look, you've got to take this very seriously, and it's kind of played out thus far. But the real question is, what comes next? You know, and this is really what we're looking for. You know, you're invalidated for me if you take out this right shoulder, or certainly even if you ran the 25K neckline. A revisit of it, very common once you break something with momentum, certainly a significant, whether it be a neckline or a trend line, you do come and retest it quite often. So there is still a possibility that you retest this, but ultimately we still think that that gives you an upside scenario. And that actually what you're doing right now is very expected. 30K is and was always to be expected as resistance and a point of consolidation, a lull period, or a period where Bitcoin pulls back. You've got to remember it ran all the way to nearly 31. It's pulled back inside of it. The sort of immediate structure that you're putting in is interesting. For a number of reasons. You know, technically you could set up a pattern here that would lead to upside continuation, but that would largely depend on not running certainly this low here at 26,900. So for me, if you run 26,900, the likelihood is that you're going to come down and start to look for moving up the time frames, levels in. So if you run 26,900, then look for you've got a lot more probability that you're going back to the neckline or somewhere in between it. Until then, you know, this could turn. But there's a lot going on this week, which we'll now move on to, that you need to watch. You've got earnings from the likes of Apple. We can see that the stock market is not doing a lot. It's not doing a lot at all at the moment. I think it's really waiting for that Apple earnings and also waiting for all the economic data that we've got coming this week. And we'll talk about some that we've had today and some that we've had previously. One thing that I'm watching very closely is gold. I wouldn't say that this is great structure for gold, to be honest. It looks very heavy. And it looks to be hanging. You got to remember gold more broadly. You know, this is something that we've set out. And we really highlighted that Bitcoin going to 30K was at the same time that gold was pushing up a new all-time highs. The dollar was at support, and the S&P was also at resistance. So it's very interesting how this has happened. Since then, actually, it's marginally up. Whether it pushes on higher, I do think that, you know, if I think that we're now, and we think a 25 basis points is coming, I think that we've done a lot of looking at what happens to markets when the 2-year yields top and the rates go sideways. So typically the 2-year tops and then rates go up 25 basis points after the top in. So that is very much in line with where we're at, and then they go sideways. And actually markets do historically do quite well in those conditions. And I think the same thing is going to unfold. I think there's this kind of added jetpack for Bitcoin and crypto, which is the kind of failing of the fiat systems that we're really seeing exaggerating. The banking crisis isn't over, but it might end with CBDCs. This is how I think they usher in CBDCs is through a banking system, and they just say, okay, right, we'll just start again, ignoring rather conveniently for them the fact that they've made us all give up some of the best years of our life for money, which they've controlled and manipulated, and actually it's the very tool that they've used to enslave the masses. Yellen urges Congress to act soon as possible to avoid US debt fault ceiling. Since hitting a current statutory limit of 31.4 trillion in January, the Treasury has been staving off the possible default of the federal obligation by using special accounting maneuvers. Wow. So they're just making it look good. US could breach limit by the 1st of June. They will raise the ceiling. The debt ceiling is not a ceiling. It's a rooftop bar with as much narcotics as you want and all you can eat and drink. It's just a joke. Like the US is going to default. Really? So the US have the option, and we've always said this, between defaulting or upping the debt ceiling. What do you think they're going to do? One leads to complete chaos and destruction and the demise of the US, and the other is just more of what they've done consistently. The fact that they printed $7 trillion, which is why all the markets went up, that was the bubble, and it wasn't a speculative bubble, it was a bubble caused by monetary phenomena. That is a point that people still miss about why everything did what it did from March 2020 onwards. It's a monetary phenomenon, and you can see that with a correlation. So looking at this, so this is where we're at for Bitcoin. Ultimately, I'm a bull. We've been a bull since the start of the year. It's been the right call. It's a little bit petty, I think, whenever we get a pullback that people instantly assume that, new lows are incoming. They might be. I'm not here to tell you they 100% won't be. I'm here to say I don't think they will, and I think there's a very good chance that crypto does well, despite everything going on, but we will see. And actually, this week is going to be very telling. I think today we had Eurozone core inflation slows unexpectedly in April, blurring the picture of rate hikes. The ECB's rate decision is potentially Thursday. So this is what we've got going on today. Really, the main one's the Eurozone CPI. And then let's take a look at tomorrow, which is going to be a big one with the US. So we've got US FOMC statement and rate decision. This is at 7 p.m. UK time. So I think there's that 4, 5-ish. No, what's that? 2, something like that. 1, 2 o'clock p.m. US. This is going to be big. And this is really going to dictate things. Now, it looks very much like, and this is actually in line, and we can show the 2-year yields again towards the end, and what happens with rates once it's topped. Typically, they do 25. This has got a 97% probability. However, despite the second biggest bank failing in US history, markets still expect 90% plus the Fed to raise by 25 basis points. 25 is expected, and I think actually if they do 25, my take on this is that, and I don't want to say too much on it, but my take is that actually markets could do well on 25. And actually, if they did 0, which I don't think is likely, I think 25's you should expect it, then markets would do well. If they did 50 or something like that, then everything would reprice. We've seen a bit of a reprice in the 2-year yields yesterday, although they finished back down. Talking about the 2-year yields and overlaying the Fed funds, you can see historically the 2 years top, and then Fed funds jumps by about 25%. But actually, if you look at what happens under this period for markets, which people just ignore, people are very selective with data. You can see from the top in, this is the period that the markets actually went on to put in new all-time highs. Certainly there, if you look further back, we've covered all this in great length, guys. It's why you should subscribe to this channel, because we look at things that other people just simply don't. So we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to find out soon enough. This week is going to be a volatile one. It already has proven to not be that thus far, because, of course, it was bank holiday yesterday. Markets really to watch, of course, are gold. I think there's a big correlation, this kind of anti-fiat thesis, whether gold does something like this and sets up, which means Bitcoin likely 25K revisit, or whether it can sort of propel itself here. It was very interesting that we saw Stan Druckenmiller saying he was short dollars and long gold. The dollar's been buoyant. We looked at the bullish div that you had. We did expect this. This all came around about the 30K zone, which has played out. We'll see what happens. Your real telltale sign is, are you going to run this? But ultimately, when dollar trends typically last for a while, and I think this is a downtrend for the dollar, I do think, although it's not really a head and shoulders I'd bet on, something like this could play out. But this is all going to be economically driven. I think the US is largely done with rates. This could be the last one. And then what have we got on? We've got, I think we've got the Eurozone actual rate hike. And then on the 5th, we got the non-farm payroll, which is going to be interesting. We've also got Cook speaking for the FOMC. So lots going on, lots to look out for this week. You should all be prepared for it. Bitcoin gets fresh vote of confidence as MicroStrategy adds holding. Now, I'm not a fan of Michael Saylor at all. I'm not a fan of MicroStrategy. I think, he's just used Bitcoin to get... I think Michael Saylor has just... This is irrelevant. Actually, MicroStrategy doesn't look too bad. This is irrelevant because it's just my opinion. But I think, personally... .com boom, MicroStrategy was a dead company, and so largely was Michael Saylor until he adopted Bitcoin, which he initially wasn't a fan of. Whether his intentions are pure or not, I don't know. One thing that was bullish for me is when MicroStrategy, you had the same thing showing up across the board, guys, which is why we made that move back at the start of the year. One thing that I found quite bullish. First of all, Fidelity and Bank of America buying MicroStrategy. They're not doing that because they love Michael Saylor. They're doing that because they want Bitcoin exposure. And that's the only regulated, or one of the only regulated ways that they can do it. We've also seen huge uptick in Grayscale's GBTC, which you could argue has led this, which suggests institutional. But actually, Michael Saylor being in profits on his Bitcoin. I think that's a good sentiment check. And I think this grows arms and legs. And, we've got the halvening coming up. We've got loads of things to look forward to. In regards to the short term, I expect this is a pullback, nothing more, that ultimately leads to upside continuation. Whether that pullback comes in the form of 25K or whether you turn around somewhere here. Again, you run that 26,900, look for more downside, look for 25K. And that's broadly all I've got for you in this video, guys. We will see what happens. We've got the Eurozone data today that we've had out. Have we got any more happening? Anything else happening today? Not particularly. You've maybe got the JOLTS jobs openings for the US. Maybe a bit of a precursor going into FOMC. Not FOMC, non-farm payroll. But we will see. I believe that's all I've got for you guys. On that note, if you've enjoyed the content, a like is always appreciated. So as a comment, if you want to check out my Patreon and find out what I'm buying, where I'm buying it, please do check the link in the description. Some great conversations going off in there. And on that note, I'm going to love and leave you. See you in the next video, guys. Have a triumphant Tuesday.